All right, welcome back, everyone. Hello, hello. So I did call the, I guess that's why we can open the doors. I'm going to open the doors. Okay, so I did call facilities, and all they said is, we'll put in a work order. So that could mean in right now, that could mean tomorrow, that could mean next week. I don't know. So we'll have to just kind of deal with it. Luckily, my lecture is going to be pretty short today, about an hour, and then you're going to be allowed to work on a lab. So bear with me just for about an hour today. Okay, so your attendance, don't forget to do your attendance every day. The attendance code is always going to be up on the blackboard if you miss it ever in the future. Something I'm trying this semester, or a lot of people are trying this semester, is I want to make sure that we are all. There's a lot of us in here that we are all understanding some of the key concepts that are being taught in this class, and also, to kind of give you early on what kind of questions are going to be asked on the exam, because I do recognize that ultimately you are all here to get some kind of grade, right? So I just want to make sure you're learning the right things and see the types of question I might be asking on the exam. So I'm going to be doing these polls once in a while. So if you can please go to me, I did send out an email late last night about this. So if you haven't gotten it yet, you can go right now. If you can please open your laptop, which looks like you already do, please go to pollev.com/Nayon, Nayon, and it might ask you to log in or create an account. If it does, go ahead and please create an account. Viterbi, I don't know about the rest of USC, but in Viterbi at least, they want to try to push everybody to use Poll Everywhere, so it's possible that you might use this in other classes anyway. So once you create an account, you don't have to create an account for every class. It'll be available for you for all different classes. So looks like people are answering already. So here is a question that might appear on the exam. In this piece of HTML code, it's kind of tiny, forgive me. I'll try to do something bigger next time. Which is an attribute. So there's the href right here, the google.com right here, and then click it. So go ahead and put in your answer, and let's see how you're doing. All right, people are starting to get on. If you're having any issues, yeah. That would be preferred, yeah. Do you have a problem with it? I think if you try to use your personal one, I don't even know if it'll let you log in. Yeah.
How do we find the poll?
On the browser, if you go to pollev.com/Nayon, you should see it right on your laptop. Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes to try it out. So if you've been in any of those like large introductory biology classes, they make you use clickers, right? But now thanks to web technologies, we can do this without clickers. We can use laptops, phones, anything that has access to a web browser. It's kind of great. Ooh, okay. So it looks like href is winning, but we do have a few and google.com as well. And somebody just put in, okay, never mind. They decided not to. All right, they don't want to be the only person. Okay, I'm gonna just wait a little bit longer. I think we should have about 50 some students here. Alrighty. Yes.
With regards to our assignments,
Yeah.
would we be allowed to put those on GitHub to start building a workbook?
Sure. Yeah. You can do, it's your assignment. You can do whatever you want with them.
There's just like other ITPs you weren't allowed to put things on.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, they didn't want you like because they use the same assignments over and over.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's a good point. I'm gonna say it's okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
For now, if there's a problem, I'll probably find you. Yeah. Yes.
What was the email last night?
Which email?
You said you sent an email?
Oh, it was about. Or I didn't send it. It was Pole EV probably sent something to you saying like, please make an account. Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's try this out. Okay, so which is an attribute? Let's see. Let's see what the correct answer is. The correct answer in this case, it is href. So href is a attribute. A is actually a tag. If you recall, the A in between the these are called tags. Href is an attribute. Google.com is a value of an attribute. ClickMe is just a piece of text in this case. Target is actually also an attribute as well. So we talked about that. But it looks like most of you kind of got that, so we'll move on to the next one. Here's another one. Okay, here's another snippet of code. Kind of small. This is CSS. What is an example of a CSS property? What is which is a CSS value? So there's some options there. Take a look and quickly, take a look at this answer at this code. Which one is a what do we call a proper CSS property? What do we call a CSS value? Okay, alrighty. Seems like D is the most popular answer so far, but don't just, it looks like people are switching answers quickly, but it's okay. You never know what, just because everybody says so doesn't mean it's always right? But it looks like D is by far the winner so far. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show the correct answer. It is indeed D. Oh, good job. 52. So pretty. I'm glad. I'm glad everybody got this one right, or at least everybody that voted. Yep. So the color is indeed the property. Red is the value. So anything on the left-hand side is the property. The right-hand side is the value. Okay. Last question. This one might have some various answers. This one isn't as straightforward. So this div called box, just one div, okay? This div called box has the following CSS applied to it. What is its width when you render it to the browser? So when this box shows up on your browser, what is its total width? Okay, various answers here. Looks like the leading one is 330 and 332. 340 is also a contender as well. Ooh. Oh, wow. Okay, so is everybody just conforming to 332? Slowly, everyone's okay. All right, in this case, the one with the most votes is the answer. 332. Some of you might be like, what? Why? Let's go over this real quick. So, yes, this box is set to 300 pixels, right? And we did talk about that. That's how you set widths to divs. However, when you add padding left and right, it adds space inside the div. So this box grows by 50 pixels on the left, 50 pixels on the right. That is 330, which some of you put 330, which is a good guess. However, there's one more piece here. Border also adds to our div. So So 1 pixel on the left, 1 pixel on the right. Now it's 332. Some of you wrote 340 pixels, probably thinking, well, what about the margins, right? The margins on this, in this case at least, the box, when you add margin to the box, that space outside the box, this box element. So it actually doesn't increase the width. Only the padding and the border in this case is increasing the width. Any questions on that? Okay, this is definitely an exam question. Understanding the box. Oh, still change answers. Cool. Okay. Okay, sure, change your answer. This is not graded, so yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so in this the assignment 1 with the article and stuff, it's fine if yours went over a little bit over 800, because I said it's 800 pixels, but some of you might have done over. Yeah. Uh-huh. In Firefox, you say? Oh, really? I think that might be the case, which we're going to talk about. If they're doing like a container and they have 3 divs inside that have margins, then the container grows. Yes. Yeah. Which actually we're going to be doing today. So, yes.
So in assignments moving forward, whenever it says width 300 pixels, does that mean that the width itself is 200, or should we account for like the padding?
Yeah, good question. We should account. So from assignment 2, I'm more specific about it. I say it has to be total, but has to be 800 pixels. So yeah. Actually, for today's lab, you're going to be doing that today. So yeah, good question. Any other questions before? Okay. Any other questions about this? Just some basics we did last lecture, just to help you review and make sure you're understanding the key concepts from last week. Alrighty, so last week or by yesterday, many of you worked on the movie assignment, and I've looked at some of them. They look really good. Nice job. Some of your lessons that you learned were entertaining as well. So far we've created a rather simple looking web page. It's all just one giant column, right? However, in 2019, there's so much information you want to display on a web page, you got to get creative, right? So in most websites you see nowadays, they probably aren't like single column like this. They probably have multiple columns. For example, a very common type of website is, like I mentioned, like an article, some kind of blog article, a news article, whether it's like a publication like LA Times or whatever, or it's blog post, right? Whatever it is, they typically like to do something like this. They typically like to have on the left side a bunch of like the actual article, right? And on the right side, they have like some related or latest, like some other news story to get the user to try to click on stuff, right? So you have like this left column and then you have this right column, right? Similarly, even in like Instagram is very, made this very popular. They're all about 3 by 3. They're all squares, right? So they have 3 columns in every row, something like that. I had Amazon up earlier, but in Amazon as well, you have like 2 columns, one with products and another with like the product information. So what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be creating columns and learn how to create not just a single column like this, but multiple columns in one row. So today's lecture is going to be rather, if all goes well, we should end in about 45 minutes or so. And what we are going to be creating today is, once I get this up, is there it is a lab. Okay, something like this where you're gonna make 2 columns like this with labs and assignments. You're also gonna add some images on the bottom just for fun as well. And you are gonna be using this page for your future labs and assignments. Ultimately, actually, what's happening is, let me go to the morning section class. Ultimately, when you remember the faces that I showed you, so when you click on your face, you're going to see that page like that. So this is where you're going to be ultimately keeping track of all your assignments and labs from now on. So that's the goal today, to create to be able to create columns like this. And we're going to talk about some best practices about that. It is you will have time to do it in class, and the TAs and I will help you out and things like that. But if you cannot finish it, you will have extra time until later midnight. But in the morning section, most people did a good chunk of it. They just had like small little issues at the end. So I think you will be fine as long as you are following along and you're getting the key concept here today is how to create columns like this. Okay. So while we're, I do have some slides to go over just to talk some general big concepts. But before I do that, if you can please click on today's lecture notes, go to today's class website. If you go click on today's lecture notes, you are going to find under the to-do section this Dropbox link. So I'm going to give you some starter code today. We're not going to write code from scratch today just because there's a lot to go over. So if you can please click on that Dropbox link. And we're going to go ahead and download this. So I have a HTML file here for you, and I have a bunch of images here for you. And we're going to save all that in a folder called ITP 303 PM, or wherever you added your folders yesterday, your files on Thursday. I'm going to save that in there. So I'm going to download this. I'm just direct download. It's going to download a zip folder for me. Go ahead and do ITP 303 PM. And then there it is. There's my zip file. I'm going to unzip it. And then you should see this page here. It's just a bunch of pictures right now. And it says Coachella on it. Okay. And what we're going to be doing in the lecture part is we're going to be converting this piece of code into something that looks like this, a wannabe Coachella page. As you can, the key thing here is you can see we have 3 columns next to each other, right? And we even have like a little hover effect here. So that is our ultimate goal. We're going to learn how to convert this mumbo jumbo code into something that looks nice like this. So one more time, if you kind of got lost, click on today's lecture notes, lecture 3. Click on to-dos for this Dropbox link here under to-dos. If you click on it, you're going to see this Dropbox page. Just go ahead and click download and then direct download, and then it should pop up. It should download somewhere or pop up somewhere, and then just save it in like your wherever you're saving your ITP 303 folders. Okay, if you have any issues, kind of wave. My TAs are sitting in the back row to help you out. Let me close some of these. Okay, your last 3 minutes to check in for attendance. Okay, while you're doing that, let's go over some slides. Today we're going to talk about page layouts, compound selectors, and specificity. 5 things we're really going to talk about today. Again, I'm going to keep repeating myself today. We're going to be using float to create columns. We're going to talk about CSS specificity rules, CSS compound selectors, CSS pseudo selectors, and the CSS display properties. So a lot of CSS today. Float. We touched upon float last Thursday. That's float is what we use to, if you recall, float is what we use to make our dang it, I closed it. It's what we use to make our assignment, the pictures in our assignment 1, like go to the left, go to the right. Okay. So this is kind of what it looked like, and I don't mean to embarrass Ryan, but I saw this great question on Piazza, like, hey, my image is like doing something weird, and it's not like, why is it going outside my div? It should have stayed within the div, right? Like, why isn't the div supposed to like grow tall as it's supposed to, right? So this is an unfortunate slight think of it as a side effect to floats. Floats sometimes do make some weird things happen because what's happening normally is by default HTML likes to go top to bottom. It's a very vertical. We call it a vertical thing. We call this the document flow. So we like to go from top to bottom. Everything is HTML just likes everything to go from top to bottom. It doesn't generally like going sideways or anything like that. It just likes to have a clean top to bottom approach. However, However, if we want to make our websites a little more interesting looking, more creative, we do need to put stuff on the left or the right, right? Like kind of like this. We want to put the pictures on the left and the right. That's where float comes in, right? So when we use float, unfortunately, there's a bit of a side effect. What happens is when I start putting floats in, the HTML document starts getting a little confused, to put it lightly. Anytime you use a float, what we call a document flow gets disrupted. And then like the div just thinks that this image doesn't even exist anymore. It just kind of ignores it. So one way to control these floats, and I'm gonna show you this here. So again, normally normally things are stacked top to bottom. And then when we put an image in there as well, like it's usually top to bottom, right? And then the moment I start to put floats, like when I add the float, as you can see on this image, it floats to the left, and then all the text goes around it, right? Which is great. That's fine for this purpose here. You could also float to the right or left, right? We've talked about that. However, if you want to control the float a little bit, maybe you want to specify when my float stops. This is another property, CSS property called clear, that helps you control the float. So if I put clear float here, and we'll do more of this in our code together. But the moment I press clear float here, now what happens is that floating effect, the wrap around effect stops. Like you clear the float, you stop the float, right? And now everything else is back to normal. Okay, so using clear, this is how we're gonna be creating columns as well. So as you can see right now, I have two columns, a red one and a gray one, and I have like a footer that's yellow as well. And with these two divs, by default, stack top to bottom, because that's what divs do. They don't like to go next to each other. By default, they like to stack top to bottom. And then when I add to the columns, when I give them a width and a float left, this is what happens. They actually end up going next to each other, kind of like how those images float around the text. Using float, we can do this to the divs as well. But notice how again, kind of weird thing here, right? The text is trying to wrap around my boxes, just like how the text tries to wrap around images. But I don't want this effect, right? I just want two columns in this one row. Then that whole clear float thing comes in handy, just right over here, which which I'll show you in a little bit. And now we can have a nice, there you go, one row we have two divs, and in the second row we have like a longer div. So we have like a nice two-row thing using floats and clearing. So I'll show you more. We'll demonstrate. I think I'll demonstrate more of that at the end, and we can try this out. But that's the general idea behind it. We already talked about this, but I just want to quickly just go over this. Margin and padding, right? Padding creates space inside. That's the yellow part. You can have borders around it, and then the gray part is margins. Okay, CSS specificity. While you were working on your assignment, maybe you ran into some interesting specificity things. So let's look at this code here. Header, right? Header, there's ID. Remember, the hashtag is ID. Okay, so for my header, I put background color red. So this is obviously red right now. Okay. But however, things get a little more complicated when you have multiple things. So you could actually do something like this where the div has an ID header and it has a class yellow and pink. So there are two classes on here. All right, so when you have like multiple things on a div or on any HTML tag, like how do you know which one wins, right? Which one actually shows up? And CSS is all about overriding. CSS cascading style sheet, it cascades, so you can easily override anything. And this is one of the reasons some people really hate CSS, is because things override other things, and you don't know what overwrote. But there are some specificity rules. So let's take a look at this. What if I have something like this where header is background color red, there's the hash up here, and then I have a class yellow with a background color yellow. So the header is either going to be red or yellow. Okay, who thinks it's going to be red? Okay, some of you. Anyone think it's going to be yellow? Okay. Okay, this is where specificity really comes in. It's actually going to be red. The reason is this, because of this rule here. The rule of thumb is the more specific a CSS rule is, the more likely it will win. Okay, what the heck does that mean? All right, so I do have header and class, right? But remember about remember this ID? I'm sorry, header and yellow. Remember the ID? ID is what? It's unique, right? And only one element can have it. So that means it's very specific to this div. Only one div can have an ID header. Versus yellow, it's a class. That means multiple elements can have a class yellow. So therefore, even though yellow came after header, right? This header is still going to be red. There's actually a bunch of there's actually a bunch of ways to calculate specificity, but you really don't need to do any of the math on it. As long as you know, again, rule of thumb is the more specific the CSS rule is, the more likely it will win. So what about something like this then? What about, oh, well, I have a class yellow and pink. Okay, I think I already showed the answer. But who thinks it's going to be yellow? Pink? Oh, good. Great. It is going to be pink. And the reason of this is because yellow and pink, they're both classes, right? They both have the same level of specificity. So when something has the same level of specificity, then the rule is whoever comes later wins. So whoever was written last wins here. So pink was written last, so pink is a winner. Okay, so, something slightly new that we haven't covered too much, but maybe you kind of get an understanding here. What about this? We have 4 options: green, red, yellow, and pink. Okay, we have a container here as well, a header. So 4 options. I'm going to ask one last time. Who thinks it's going to be green? Okay. Red? Okay. Yellow? Probably not. Pink, right? No, right? Okay, the answer is actually green. Why is that? I know we haven't talked about this, what the heck that is. We will today. But you can select, what this means is it says, go find my ID container. There's my ID container. Inside the ID container, look for ID header. There it is. Now that's going to be background green. That's really specific, right? You're specifically saying, go look in my container, and then go look in the header. That's green. Make that green. Versus this simply says header. So because this is the most specific, more than any of these, although it was declared first, it is green. Okay, so watch out for this as you're doing your assignment, especially when the assignments get a little more complex. Because what happens all the time is you're going to be writing all these CSS rules, and you're like, wait, I made that background color like yellow, but it's pink. Why is it pink? And you're like trying to figure it out, and it's probably because something else was overriding something else. And this is one of the reasons some people really hate CSS. Yes?
When would you use the first example?
If you just wanted to be, I mean, it's really a matter of choice, but I guess if you want to just be very specific that it's a header inside a container. Yeah, but this, honestly, either one, you can use it. There's no, set rule on which one you should use, which one use it. It's a matter of choice. Yeah, somebody else had, yeah.
Like, did that mean the sense? Because you cannot have header in another place,
Right. They pretty much mean the same thing in this case, yeah. I'm just showing you a little bit more of an example, I guess, yeah.
So, let me go back to the last question. So here you have header in front of the dot yellow.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, yeah.
Header, container, dot yellow.
Yeah, if you had header yellow or container yellow, that will definitely win. Yeah. Rather than the later ones. Yep. Yes.
So classes with multiple words for the name, you can call them by yellow.
Oh, yeah. So actually what this means is there's 2 classes. Yeah. So every time you put a space in the class, it means you're creating another one. Yeah. Again, there is actually a mathematical way to calculate this, but you don't need to know that. Just understand, as the more specific it is, the more likely it wins. Yes? Sure. Yeah. So ID versus class. ID is usually denoted with the hash, kind of like a hashtag, and the class is denoted with the period. ID is just like your USC ID. It's unique, so only one element or one tag can have it. Versus something, that's why it's header, right? It's more like a name. Versus a class, like yellow, I could put it anywhere I want. I could have my header be yellow. I could have my container be yellow. I could put a class as many as time I want. Yeah. I saw another hand. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question, if you didn't hear it, was, so you have two classes here, yellow and pink. So if you put like a bunch of properties in yellow and a bunch of properties in pink, will both of them be applied? Yes, it will be. Yes, but if there's any of them that are the same, like pink has background color pink and background color yellow, if any of them are the same, the pink will override the yellow. Yeah. Great questions, guys. I love this. Okay, so now you are probably like at least 50% better at CSS than most people, because this is the biggest like headache and people don't take the time to understand it. But yeah, this is the general rule. And if you have any more questions on it, I'm happy to answer for you. Any other questions before I move on? All right. Okay, a little bit more. Compound and pseudo selectors. So kind of like what I showed you up here, container space header. There are a lot of different ways you can write selectors as well. Some things maybe we haven't talked about before. You could do something like this, like header, comma, footer. Okay, that header, comma, footer means when you use see the comma, it means both of them. So if I do header, comma, footer, it means my header and my footer, and then I could write some CSS that goes to both of them. So it's like an and it's actually pretty useful. I do use the comma a lot. Okay, and there's also this one we just saw, but a little different. If you have a space, what that means is it's going to look for content, right? And then any P's inside the content tag, that's selected there. So a little bit more specific. You can get even more specific with a little less than sign, greater than sign here. This means it's a direct child. Meaning it's a little bit different from this one, where this selects all of your paragraphs, right? Any paragraphs in your content element, versus this one it only selects its child, so not its great grandchildren. Notice how this P is inside this div tag here. It's a little more specific. There's a plus sign that does siblings. There's a squiggly sign that does sibling as well. But honestly, the ones I use the most is probably the top two, maybe three, even a third one. But just here, some common compound selectors. So there's ways, just to save some time with your code, there's ways to write your CSS rules like this. Yeah.
For the comma, wouldn't it be better to use a class?
Yeah. Good question. So the question is, well, for the comma, why don't you just use a class? Yeah, you totally can. This is another one of those, like, more a matter of style, of kind of your choice. Maybe you really do need to use two IDs and they can't have the same class, or maybe you want to override a certain things. You could use that. Yeah, you're right though. You could use, instead of a comma, you could totally use a class. Yeah. Yes, in the back. Oh, you could do anything. Classes, IDs, just tags like H1, H2, any tag selectors. Yeah. And you could put like 3 or 4 or 5. I think there's a limit of like 20 or something, but yeah. Yes. Sure.
So for this one, so like what do you mean by immediately next?
Yeah.
Like, do you have anything?
No, so it's immediately right after. So P and div are right next to each other, right? So that's why this div got selected. Yeah, so if there was P tag and then there was like another tag, an image tag, and then a div, this wouldn't work. Yeah.
So if you don't have that, then there any error?
No, it'll just not show up. Yeah. There's no errors out of the row. Yeah. All right, good questions. Okay, a little bit more. Some other things we can do with CSS using pseudo classes. We are able to add hover effects, which is kind of fun. We'll talk about that. We can also control like what it looks like when it's been visited. We can also control like a specific child element. We can say like, oh, the first paragraph in my summary div, right? My summary ID. You can use nth child to specify a specific child as well. So there's some things we will talk about in a little bit. And then lastly, inline versus block elements. That's the last thing I want to talk about today. We kind of talked about it before, but the idea behind this is that there are some HTML elements that automatically create a new row. For example, paragraphs, right? Every time I create a paragraph, new row, right? A paragraph or a div tag or paragraph tag are block elements. They create new row every time. On the other hand, something like a link like this, right? They're known as inline elements. They stay inline. So the way that those properties are controlled are through this display property, the CSS display property. So I could actually override any, again, with CSS, I could override any freaking property I want, right? So if I do, so by default, div has a display block actually, but if I put div display inline, it's going to automatically go inline like this. Okay, and vice versa. My anchors links, by default, they're inline, but if I put display block, it will become a block element like this. It will just take up all the space. Okay, so just keep that in mind because it is sometimes useful. You can actually do display none as well and just hide the whole thing, but that's the discussion for another day. Okay, then let's go ahead and try some of the stuff out that we talked about. Let's actually like code it out and try to understand what we're doing, and then we'll have some time for lab at the end. Okay, if you can again, one more time, if you go back to the lecture notes, again, click on the Dropbox link, and let's go ahead and we're going to create this page today. So let's go and open up Sublime. I'm going to go ahead and close this one. And so you could either do, on your Sublime, let's go ahead and open that file we just saved. If you do File, Open, okay, and let's navigate to where you just download the Dropbox files. I always put mine in my desktop. Got lecture 3, and then there it is, my Coachella.html. Okay, there's a bunch of code here. Okay, and then I'm also going to open it in my browser. I could file, open file, and navigate like that, or I can simply, in my Sublime, I could also just do open in browser. That's kind of convenient as well. Okay, and as you see, you're going to see a bunch of really big images right now, but we're ultimately going to convert this into a nice 3-column thing. And once you're able to create 3 columns, you are able to create however many columns you want. You can create 5 columns, 10 columns. For our purposes, you are going to be creating a 2-column layout here. Okay. Everybody okay? Anybody having troubles opening this? I do want to point out one thing. All these images, like Ariana Grande and so on and so forth, if you look at the SRC attribute, notice how this is slightly different. Notice how it says images/Ariana. That just means that, a little bit different, that we're referencing this images folder. So this is my Coachella.html, right? And in my images folder, Ariana.jpg is right here. And this is typical, this is a typical practice where we put where we like to put images in a specific folder because it's just easier to manage, right? Like you don't want to have like 500 files in one folder just for some organization's sake. That's why it's there. All right, let's take a look at the code here. Ooh, there's a lot going on here that I kind of gave you already. Let's see in here. Okay, so in here we have a header div that just says Coachella, and I have another div called artists here, and it has a lot of information. I have, first of all, this heading number 2 as artist, and I have a lot of other divs in here. They have 3 more divs in here. These 3 divs all have a class called artist, which is going to be convenient, which is probably useful because all 3 of them are going to kind of look the same anyway, right? And then we have an image tag. We have an H3 tag that says their name on the bottom as well. Okay, and then if I scroll more down, there's another div called about, and in that about, there is a bunch of paragraphs and just some extraneous text in there. Okay. And then we have a footer at the way bottom as well. Very similar setup to your assignment 1, just different types of data or information. Okay, let's start at the top. Okay, so let's take a look at my header. Okay, with the ID header, hash header. I have a background, a linear gradient going on. I think you did this in your assignment 1, so you kind of know that already. We have some padding, we have some text align, awesome. And maybe in your assignment you noticed this already. You see this white space here? This like extra white space around the browser. If you notice this, and you're like, what the heck is this? Well, today I'm going to show you. So by default, browsers like to come with this extra white space. because they want to make sure your text isn't going to the edge and things like that. So luckily with CSS, I can overwrite anything, right? So that's the beauty and curse of CSS. So I'm going to go ahead and overwrite that white space with simply body, right? Body represents the body tag, meaning my browser, literally my browser. Body, I'm going to make you delete all your margins and your paddings, and then that is going to give us a nice, clean, beautiful, no more white space. Okay, some browsers are not, they're a little bit less sensitive to that, so you do have to do something like this as well. HTML, comma, remember my comma, what I told you? HTML is the HTML tag here, so I'm just saying the HTML tag and the body tag, both of them just blip, margin 0, padding 0, all across. This is like the safe way to override all across all browsers, just make them all spacing 0. Okay. All right, let's work on this. Speaking of compound selectors, right, this is like a compound selector. Here's another one that we like to use a lot. In my header, I have this H1 tag right here. That's the Coachella right here. That's H1. It's right over here. Okay, so I want that. I want to, instead of, I want to change the size of this a little bit. I want the font size maybe like 50 pixels or something. There you go. That's nice and big. I mean, technically, I don't have to do this, right? I could have just done H1, just like that. But however, I just wanted a little extra safety, just in case there's other H1s out there. I'm going to be very specific here and say header. Okay, I feel like it's too bright. Is that better? Okay. All right, header H1. Okay, so that's another compound selector for you. So ultimately, that just means look for any H1s inside my header. That will affect that. Okay, let's look into our. So I think that's enough for our header. I think it looks fine. Now the big part in this section is the artist, right? So let's go and alter some artist stuff here as well. So in my artists, I have an H2 tag called artist. All right, I want to alter that as well. So I'm just going to continue down this path here. I'm going to say artist, H2, and I want to make your font size a little bit bigger as well. Maybe like, I don't know, I'm going to pick a number, 38 pixels or something. I don't know, maybe 30, that's too big. 36 or something. Again, using compound selectors. Okay, and then maybe I'll give it like a text align center to make it centered. Okay. So this let's talk about artists with the S and it's an ID versus a class artist with the no singular. Okay, so the ID artist here, it has a background color. It's this orange part right here. So it's actually this whole thing right, this whole giant thing here. Inside my artists are each artist singular. Okay, there's 3 artist elements here, as you can see, 1, 2, 3. All right, so just understand there's a difference between it. So our artists is containing my 3 artists. Oh my gosh, maybe I should name these better, but yes. So there's 3 artists and 1 big artists with S. Okay, so my singular artist here has the background color yellow. You just can't quite see it because the image is kind of covering it up, but there it is. Okay, and if I want to make this, first things first, notice how that yellow div is going all the way across. So by default, divs the width likes to go all the way across, right? But I want to change this. First things first, if I want to make a column, one row of 3 columns, I need to make this smaller. So let's go ahead and do that. In my artist, I'm going to give it a width of, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a number for now, like 300 pixels. And then let's go ahead and refresh that. Okay. And you're going to notice that, okay, the yellow part did actually decrease. That is actually about 300 pixels. However, the picture is way bigger than 300 pixels, right? Like it didn't do anything. So pictures don't like to get resized unless they are forced to. So this is a really good time to just say, you know what, my images do width, 300 pixels, right? So that would work. But of course, slightly better would be do something like this, a little more specific, so that what if, in case like later on you add more images, right? You don't want to accidentally alter all the images. So I'm just saying only the images in my artist div, I'm doing that. Okay, so now they're all nice and even like that. Okay. However, here's another thing. What if later down the line I'm going to change my mind and I'm going to make my width like 500 pixels or something? Right? Notice how, again, the image doesn't care about the container. Okay, the image has no care in the world about the container. It's just going to be whatever you tell it to be. So in this case, a common thing we like to do instead of this is we've been using pixels a lot so far, but we can also use percentages, and we'll talk more about percentages on Thursday actually when we're talking about like for different screens and stuff like that. I'm going to do width 100% here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's see what happens. Now my image, okay, it's just going to magically, or just going to know that whatever my artist is, right, that's the container, is just going to map, or just going to size it to 100% of my artist. So if I change this back to 300, like this, then boom, now it changes back to 300. Okay, so now I can I can even say this is 800 or whatever, and then the image will just naturally fit right in. This is a nice little trick that a lot of people tend to just have. Yes, sir.
Is that something that you can only use for images, or does that work for any?
Good question. So the question is this only used for images? No, it could be used for anything with the width. You could use it for divs, and you can see how that's useful later. And we will be using that for widths, for divs later too. Yes.
So when you say container, does that just mean a parent, or parent?
Yeah. So the artist is the parent div, and the image is inside this parent div. Yes. Yeah. That's what. When I say container, I mean parent. Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. We got the sizes going. Awesome. They're 300 pixels. However, there's another issue, right? I want all the artists to be in one row. Okay, like this. But as you can see, divs by default, they like to stack vertically, like top to bottom. But they don't like to play nice. They don't like to be next to each other. So we gotta utilize that float property to make our artists go next to each other. So let's go ahead. So again, I conveniently already did this for you. So all three artists have a class artist. So I can now just say, you know what? All three of them, I'm going to make you float to the left, meaning I'm going to push all of you divs. I'm going to, I did that already. Okay, I'm going to push you to the left. And so Ariana goes to the left, Charlie's Gambino goes to the left, Blackpink goes all the way to the left here. Okay, magically all of them go to the left, which is great because now they're in one row, right? Just like this, they're all in one row. However, there is an issue here, right? You can clearly see that issue. We'll fix it in a second, but anyway, hooray, we got to that part. Any issues? Okay, let's overcome this weird issue with this thing happening here where the text is kind of wrapping around. So very similar to what we were doing with images earlier, where we wrap around the text around the images. That's what's actually happening, but we don't want that to happen, right? We want it to just be one single row. This is where the idea of clear comes in, and this is I'll tell you right up front that using floats and clear to make columns is not the most intuitive way, but this is kind of what it's been around and unfortunately we're stuck with, so we kind of have to do this. So let's think about this. So right after black pink, I don't want about to like wrap around here. I want about to go to the next row, right? This is exactly like right here is exactly where I want the float to stop. All right, so this Ariana can float, Childish Gambino can float, Black Pink can float, but not like right here. Right? So what I'm going to do is go back in the HTML and notice this div right here. Right after black pink, I have a div called with class clear here. And it's an empty div. There's nothing in it. Okay. Actually, I'm going to rename this to clear float. Okay. Very odd, right? I know this is just an empty div. It's not doing anything. There's no content in it. Okay. And then I'm going to scroll up. And I think I have this already for you as well. This clear float class has a property clear, value both. So clear actually could be left or right, meaning like, do you want to clear the left float or the right float? But just to keep my life simple, I'm just going to say both. Just clear any floats that you see. And by doing that, now I have, I'm going to refresh right here. Now I have, now things are going back to normal. So right after black pink, we stop the floating. So anything after that is going, now it's just, it's a new line here. Okay, one more time. So with artist, I floated. Okay, and then I have a class here called clear float that's just going to clear things for me. And then I went into my HTML and I said right here, right after black pink, I want things to stop floating. Okay, these three can float, but not after that. I want it to stop. So I added a class called clear float, and that is going to clear any weirdness. And now, my about page, my about section can now go back to normal. Yes. It's saying clear the any left floats and right floats. Yeah. If you do clear left, yeah, it'll still work. Yeah, right shouldn't work. Yeah, right doesn't work. Yes, in the back. Yeah, exactly. Great observation. Yeah, going back to this thing here, if I added a clear both or clear right or whatever after this image, the div would have actually grown. Yeah, it would have gone back to normal. Yeah. Cool. So using float and clear, you can create a nice column like this. So if I wanted 2 rows of artists, right, I do the same thing. I do another 3 divs. I float them to the left, and I clear it. Right, and then so on and so forth. Okay, let's continue down this path. Okay, we got to do a little more stuff here. I want to add some spacing and all that here. So going back to my artist. Okay, I want to add some spacing. I want to first add some margins, maybe like margin left, like 10 pixels. Margin right, 10 pixels, just to give some spacing, right? Let's also give some padding here. The padding is gonna look kind of neat here because I have that yellow background on the artist. So what's gonna happen is it's gonna look something like this. It's gonna look like I have like it kind of feels like I have a border around it, but I actually don't. It's just a bunch of padding actually. Right? Because it's because I made my artist div grow bigger, and then my background color is yellow here. Yeah.
Would it make sense to do auto for the margin, like left and right?
Yeah, very good question. So why don't we just do margin like auto so we can center things, right? So in this case, it's let's just try that real quick. In this case, that's not going to quite work here because we have 3 divs in 1 row. So margin left and right won't quite work here. But we will get to that. Yes.
When you make the web page smaller, like when you make it smaller, it's like there's no space between the black pink and the other.
Like this? Yeah, that's normal right now. That's fine. Right now, we're not worried about different screen sizes. We're going to talk about it on Thursday, actually. Yeah. So right now, as long as it looks good on like your typical laptop browser, all is good. Yeah. When we start getting smaller, that's a different issue. Yeah. next thing I want to do here is I want to center these, right? I want to center my 3 divs here. However, this is a little bit trickier, a little bit different from last time because, you know, yeah, we should just be able to do like auto and make it work, right? But it's a little bit different here. So I have artists, right? Artist is my orange background here, and I want to keep that like I don't want the orange part to be centered. I do like it like this. I want it to be full width like that. So I want to leave the orange part alone. I only want these 3 to be centered, right? So how do I do that? The best way to do that in this case is we need another div or another container kind of thing around just these 3, so that we can go ahead and center that over. Does that make sense? So let me go back to the HTML. I need to write some HTML here. So I have 3 artists, right? But I want just the 3, only, I don't care about the heading, I don't care about the artist. I only want these 3 to be centered. So then to do that, I'm going to actually need to create another div that wraps just these 3 around. So I need to do something like this. Okay, I'm just gonna call it artist row, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight everything, even my clear float, just because. And then I'm gonna say, okay, right here. Maybe I'll go ahead and write some comments here. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so I just created yet another div to go inside a div. So we're nesting a lot of divs in here, right? We have divs inside of divs inside of divs. This is very typical behavior in web pages. We like to put divs inside of divs when I want to do something specific here. Okay, and then I'm going to go back up here, and then I'll just continue down here. I'm going to say artist row, right? Artist row. Okay, I just called it artist row for no reason. Just so I can have a bit of a reference, I'm going to go ahead and give it a green color. Okay, just to give it that reference right there. So my artist row is that green thing. It's exactly around just my artists. Okay. And then now I can do like the whole margin right, margin auto thing on this div, on the artist row div, instead of the artist or anything like that. Okay. All right, let's talk about width first. So we got to talk about width, right? Because we can't, like, by default the green goes all the way across, but no, we need it to be exactly wrapping around just my 3 artists here. So the width. Let's take a look here. Any ideas on what the width should be of this green div, this artist row div? Okay, naively you might think, oh, well, the artist is width 300, right? So can't I just do like width 900 pixel? Oh yeah, I'm going to do the margin left auto thing, margin right auto thing. Like, wouldn't that be enough? Let me go ahead and maybe move this up a little bit. Maybe I'll put it there, just to make it easy for us to read. Oh, shouldn't that work? Let's see. Oh, okay, so my green stuff does get centered. However, my black pink is going to the next row. Uh-oh. Right, and that is because, what is this? My artist row, I'm assuming that, so artist row is the green thing right here. I'm assuming, oh, artist row is going to be width 900 pixels, right? That's not the case, right? We talked about it in our poll earlier as well. These paddings matter. And in this case, margins also matter as well, because we have that 10 pixel space, right? So we need to do a bit of math here. My width actually ends up becoming, I'm going to comment that out. My width actually ends up becoming, let's see, we have 300, right? Plus, those 300 plus, I have my margins, I have my paddings. Oh, that's it. No, I don't have borders. Times 3, because I have 3 artists. So I'll just quickly do the math for you. It's going to be 1050 pixels. And now, voila, all of them nicely fit in one row. And yeah, if I get too small, it's going to be weird, but at least we know that's generally in the center for now. Yes?
Can you go back to the HTML?
Yes. Okay, so I created a div around just the artists. Artists without an S. Yes?
Can you go back to your map of the,
Sure.
and figure out the width?
Yes. Okay, so 300, right? That's each of them, plus 10. So I do have margin left and margin right on, that's the spacing here. I know it's the spacing outside of the artist div though. And then we have padding left, padding right. So that's times 3 is 1050. And if I did some math wrong and I put accidentally 1050, 1049, let's say, it's going to break. So you have to be really accurate here. Any questions about that? Okay, I can go ahead and take out my green. There you go. Okay. I'm happy to go over this again with you during the lab time, because in your lab you're going to have to do something like this, but you just, instead of 3 columns, you do 2 columns. Let's do something fun and easy, because this, real quick, it's something fun and easy. The hover effect, right? Like when I hover over the artist, I want background colors to change. That's fairly simple. We're going to do artist, create a new role, artist, hover. Remember that hover pseudo class? And with this, what that literally means is when I hover over the artist, what am I going to do? I'm going to change its background color to black. Okay, let's try that. That's as simple as that. And now, boom, 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 boom. We could also add something. There's a cursor property where you can change the cursor into like the hand. You could even make it like weight, and then you have like the beach ball of death or something, or you could do like that if you wanted. It's kind of neat with you can do that with CSS. One issue with the hover, you might be like, oh, what about the text, right? Like the text is not changed. It's black, so it's kind of hidden. We could change that too, luckily, with compound selectors. So I know that my the names in here, they're in H3 tags, and they're inside my artist div. So I can go do something like this, and then I can say, you know, your color is going to be white, right? So the H3 tag inside my artist. Okay, when I hover it, we're going to become, it's going to become white. Simple, fun stuff. Hovering. Okay, one last thing to do. I am going to upload this code right as soon as I wrap up, so if you miss anything, you can always look back at it. The very last thing I want to do is talk about that display property, right, real quick. In my About, let's go look at my About real quick. In my About, I have 2 links right now. I have a Coachella website and a Wikipedia website, and these are anchor links. So like I mentioned earlier, anchor links are what we call inline elements. They will always be inline. Unlike divs. Divs like to go top to bottom. They like to stack on top of each other. They're block elements, right? But I can change, again, using CSS, I could override anything I want. So I could override this kind of behavior pretty easily. So let's say, I'm just going to go up to my About here. About, all right? That's my About section. In my About section, any of my anchor links, right? If I say display block, for example, now they are block elements. As easy as that. Okay, but by default, maybe I should write this down, like default. Okay, but you can overwrite it. Okay, so boom, there it is. And you can do all kinds of stuff here, right? You can do text decoration, none, and so on and so on. So yeah. Uh-oh, I clicked on it. Okay, so just another inline element are images. Images are actually inline elements as well. So by default, they're going to be in one line. So that's kind of nice sometimes. Like, so for example, in the lab you're going to make, I give a big hint here, these images are inline elements. So you might not need to do all this float stuff. All the float stuff is necessarily when you want to work with block elements here. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up now. Now I'm gonna upload this code. Meanwhile, I do want you to start on lab 1. This is lab 1. It shouldn't take you too long. It's meant to be a lab. It's not an assignment. But the big thing here today is to create 2 columns like this. Like I mentioned, make sure you clear your floats, right? And you're going to be adding some of your favorite things in here. And go ahead and upload it. And then after you upload it, the quick way you can check that it's uploaded is just click on your face. You should see it. And then when you're done with it, you can either just leave, or if you want to just have a TA or myself check it out for you, we can do that right away. You do have to show us your code, and then we'll check it out for you, and then you don't have to worry about it. Or if you are unable to finish, that's totally fine. You do have until midnight to do it, but I highly recommend you do at least get some of it done now, so that you know that you know how to create these 2 columns like this. So the TAs and there's 2 TAs here today in the back. Yep, they're going to go around and look at when you're done. Go ahead and show it to them, or if you have any questions, ask them or myself, and we'll be here to help you. Okay, so go ahead and start your lab 1, create a brand new file, and get started.